Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into the Wrestle Guide. I'm your host, Tyler Wood, and this is the results/review show for AEW Double or Nothing 2020. Up first is the results portion. Match number 1 took place on the pre-show. It was a number 1 contenders match for the AEW Tag Team Championships. It was Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent, defeating Private Party to earn a chance at a future AEW Tag Team Championship. Up next, the first match on the main card, Brian Cage, who was a surprise entrant into the Casino Ladder match, defeated Colt Cabana, Orange Cassidy, Frankie Kazarian, Scorpio Sky, Kip Sabian, Joey Janela, Luchasaurus, and Darby Allin. Brian Cage threw Darby Allin out of the ring very unceremoniously before climbing the ladder to get the number 1 contendership poker chip for a future AEW title match. Up next, a one-on-one match. MJF defeated Jungle Boy with a clean pin. It was a modified European clutch pin, according to Excalibur. After that, another singles match. Cody defeated Lance Archer with 2 Crossroads to become the first ever TNT champion. After that, a very short singles match. Chris Statlander defeated Penelope Ford with a Big Bang Theory cradle piledriver. After that, another singles match. Dustin Rhodes defeated Shawn Spears with a final reckoning. After that, a one-on-one no DQ match between Hikaru Shida and Nyla Rose for the AEW Women's Championship. Hikaru Shida picked up the win and the championship after a running knee strike to Nyla Rose. And in the first of 2 main events for the evening, Jon Moxley retained the AEW World Championship over Brodie Lee with a sleeper hold. And finally, in the second main event of the evening, otherwise known as the actual main event, the Elite defeated the Inner Circle when Kenny Omega hit a 25-foot, one-winged angel onto Sammy Guevara for the win. So now on to the match reviews. The first match was Best Friends versus Private Party. I was eating dinner and did not get a chance to fully enjoy the match as a whole, but I think it was fairly solid from what I saw. But I don't really want to give it a star rating because I haven't had a chance to fully engulf myself in it. I don't think a tag team number 1 contendership match should have been on the pre-show. I think if it's for something that could have that type of implication for one of your titles, you need to put it on the main show. But I'll get into that some more later. The main card opens up with a super hype, smooth jazz musical number that is the theme for the AEW Double or Nothing pay-per-view. For some reason, I guess smooth jazz is what plays in a casino. I don't know. I've never been to one. Wouldn't be able to critique it. There's a mostly happy crowd of contracted wrestlers and talents. They're pretty excited, and JR comments how they're all jacked up on White Claw, which I guess he just learned what White Claw is. He's about a year behind. And the camera lingers just a little too long on Vicky Guerrero for some reason. Just stays on her, and she waves, and it's still on her. And she smiles, and the camera's still on her. Finally, it cuts away. The first match we have is the Casino Ladder match for a future AEW World Title opportunity. And the first 2 starting it off are the 2 members of SCU in the match, Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky. And they start off with some good chain wrestling. Kip Sabian's out third with Jimmy Havoc and Penelope Ford in tow. And of course, they're heels, they're bad guys. They're going to start working their numbers against the other guys already in the ring. And JR is upset about this. JR is chastising Jimmy Havoc and Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian for getting involved and breaking the rules when there are no rules in a ladder match. You can do whatever you want. You just have to be the first person to grab whatever's above the ring, whether that be a person or a championship or a bag full of magical coins. You just have to be the first person to get up there. But JR is upset about something. Some type of rule is being broken. I don't understand. Up fourth, we have Darby Allin out. Comes out like a house on fire, just running, and does a huge missile suicide dive. And later, Darby's been kicking ass, still before the next entrant. He conjures a skateboard out of nowhere and throws it at Cass. I don't know if I didn't see him pick it up from under the ring. It's just he didn't have a skateboard 1 minute. The next second, he's got a skateboard. Throws it at Kaz. Kaz goes up on a ladder. Darby takes the skateboard, climbs the ladder, and hits an ollie from a 12-foot ladder, trying to hit Kazarian. He moves, and Darby just eats some major shit. And he sells his knee for a good little while, I think, through the rest of the match. I got concerned. I didn't know if he had actually hurt himself or not. It was a pretty nasty fall. It was pretty sick to watch, I'm not going to lie. You have Orange Cassidy out at number 5, and he saunters over to the commentary desk to ask how the match works, despite being told how the match worked by his two teammates, Chuck Taylor and Trent, backstage, which is kind of disappointing because Orange is lazy, but this is the first time I've really seen him come off as stupid, and I don't think that's the best for him in the long run. I can understand someone being so lazy that they have to smarten themselves up in a way that they come up with a new creative solution to a problem, but Orange Cassidy stands on a ladder that is completely folded and just kind of reaches for the title, and he can't get it, and he just looks like an idiot here, and that's a shame. I really like Orange Cassidy, and I don't want him to be portrayed as that stupid. JR also gets pretty mad at Orange Cassidy. I think he gets fed up with him here for some reason, and it's when Orange doesn't want to open the ladder all the way, and JR is just getting real indignant, and he goes, he doesn't know how to set up a ladder. He'll never work for Home Depot, ever. But the tone that he has is one of genuine contempt for Orange Cassidy. Up next at number 6, Colt Cabana. Another good spot that happens in here is Colt tried to climb the ladder, and SCU just takes the ladder from underneath and dumps Colt. And Colt tried to measure himself, but it didn't quite work, and he fell backwards, hit his head on the turnbuckle, very nasty spot. Joey Janela's out next as the 7th entrant. And Joey comes out with a lot more intensity, I felt, than what Darby Allin had. Darby did some suicide dives, but I felt like Janela really had the energy behind him. Luchasaurus is out next at 8th. He just cleans house, and he takes a code red from the top turnbuckle from Darby Allin. It was a really nice spot. And then, number 9, we have our surprise entrant, Brian Cage. Brian, I screamed like a little girl just a little bit when he came out. I was a little excited. I hadn't heard anything about Brian Cage being close to being signed with AEW or anything like that, but obviously he has a history working with the Bucks and PWG, and he's had a very storied career. He's a very talented guy. I believe he takes steroids. I think he's admitted to it, I'm pretty sure, but if you take a look at the guy and you take a look at his history and how quickly he bulked up, and you get a look at that back knee, and you know he's done some steroids, and that's fine as long as his body reacts in a healthy way. I think that, just whatever. I don't know what the AEW policy on steroids and drug use is, but they maybe need to take a look at it. And another weird thing about this, Brian Cage's entrance music, it has Taz voicing the very beginning of it, and he says, "Who can stop the path of Cage?" But it's very choppy like that, and I think it would sound better if it flowed all together, but I guess Taz went into the booth, said, I'm one of them out, bro. I'm one of them out. I guess he sounds like Vince Russo. So Cage is out. He hits a big F5 onto Darby. Strong European uppercut, Insecurity, release German, boom, 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 just like that. Onto Darby, and then he gets a vertical suplex onto Janela, who starts cussing some big words. So he uses some very big language that comes across perfectly onto the audio feed that no one acknowledges. Then you have Cage climbing the ladder with Cassidy on his back, and then all of the other entrants are kind of pulling at him. They eventually get him down, start beating him down. They toss him outside, cover him up with all sorts of shit, ladders, tables, a huge casino chip they were using for the decoration. If you saw the year before, it was the thing that it was a stack of them that Jon Moxley tossed Kenny Omega off of. So everyone's kicking ass for a while. There's some flips, there's some leapfrogs over the ladder. Marco Stunt comes in for whatever reason, and Orange Cassidy tried to hit a chokeslam onto Luchasaurus. Didn't work. So Luchasaurus calls in Marco Stunt, comes in and chokeslams Orange Cassidy off of a tiny ladder. I don't know why. Marco Stunt's not really for me, but you know, what are you going to do? Joey Janela hits a huge Death Valley driver onto Orange Cassidy to the outside of the ring on top of Brian Cage's tomb of garbage. There's some more crazy spots, some more good moves from Luchasaurus. He really comes across as a star, and I have high hopes for him in the future, but he's cleaning house, kicking ass. And then as he starts to climb the ladder, Brian Cage bursts forth out of his debris prison like someone who takes a shit ton of steroids. Because he probably does. I think he does. And he goes into the ring, starts cleaning house, and the final spot of the match is Cage lifting a ladder, fireman carry style, with Darby on top of the ladder, barely gets it over his head and just dumps him to the outside, and Darby makes a nasty splat. But that's what Darby does. Darby just does that repeatedly, match after match. And Cage climbs the ladder, and he unhooks the token, the casino chip, and he is ready to cash that in. I guess he cashes it in. They weren't really clarifying if it was like a cash-in thing, or if it's like at a certain pay-per-view in the future, or if you have to give notice, or how it works. I'm not really sure, but he has a future AEW World Championship opportunity at some point, and Taz comes back out, and he looks proud, but it's Taz, so he looks kind of, you know, like he has gas, but he's tough, you know. And that was it. Pretty good match. I think I'm going to give it, I don't do half stars or any type of nitty-gritty 0.75, so I'm going to give it 4 stars. I really liked the match. I think it was really solid. There were a lot of good spots, got me really excited. And the Brian Cage debut put it over the top for me. I love it when guys debut in AEW now. It feels so special and new, and it's really cool to see. A couple of other thoughts coming out of this. Darby did not have the intensity that I thought he would. He came out, but he seems like when he has other weapons to use other than his body, he sometimes gets a little distracted, he gets a little bogged down. But then Janela comes out, and he had more of the intensity I thought I was going to see from Darby. Another thing that I thought was interesting, JR mentioned something that he brought up again later, and that was, what is Taz to Brian Cage? Because Taz was wanting to mentor Darby Allin. That was another cool thing. They're kind of tying together this storyline you've been seeing on AEW Dark for a few weeks, where Taz wants to take Darby Allin under his wing. It might have also been on Dynamite. He's trying to take him under his wing and show him how he could be better, and Darby shrugs him off. Darby's a loner. He doesn't want any of that help, that coaching, none of that. And I guess Cage took him up on the offer. but they're really stressing, what is Taz? Is he his manager? Is he his coach? And they brought that up a few times, so I'm interested to see where that goes from here. And another interesting thing, Brian Cage has a blue tongue for some reason. I don't know if he's stealing that gimmick from Liv Morgan or what, but I don't know if he's like a Jolly Rancher guy before matches, or like if that's supposed to make him more intimidating. He's a scary looking dude as it is, and the blue tongue is just kind of a weird point at that. But overall, solid match, 4 out of 5 stars. Up next, we have MJF versus Jungle Boy, and an interesting thing to start this off, Wardlow takes MJF's stuff, and he heads to the back, so he's not going to be in MJF's corner for this, which is interesting. Usually he's been his backup and kind of, helping him cheat to win as much as he can, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case on this one. So this match starts with a lot of good back and forth, a lot of tit for tat. At one point, MJF yanks Jungle Boy down to the ground by his hair, and Jungle Boy, they have basically the same sequence back and forth, and Jungle Boy does it right back to him. So, MJF, no good deed going unpunished for him. And MJF really is showing what kind of a giant piece of shit he can be in this match. At some point, these two transition from this like body scissors into this upside down. I do not know what it's called. I've been watching wrestling a long time. I've seen it happen a few times. I know Daniel Bryan's done it, but it's this thing where their legs are locked and they're upside down and they're facing each other, like kind of doing headstands. And MJF just takes the moment to slap Jungle Boy as hard as he can. There was that moment there was a time MJF feigned a knee injury. The doctor came in and was checking him out, and he used that distraction to attack Jungle Boy from behind. He was playing to the crowd a lot, jaw-jacking a lot. That came back to bite him, because that's when Jungle Boy hit an outside dive onto him, and that's where Jungle Boy felt like he was wasting a little bit of motion, because he had a few times where he was running the ropes for seemingly no reason, just to hit repeated moves. Like he did 3 dives to the outside. He ran off the ropes just to give MJF a giant double chop, which didn't seem like that. It didn't seem like running the ropes would really give you a lot more momentum on that, but I don't know. Kayfabe-wise, maybe running the ropes makes the chops a little bit heavier. Who knows? There was another sequence where they were having a chop fest back and forth, and there was some good meaty slaps in there. I think MJF came out on the better of that one. He had the better sounding chop. Best in Show award goes to him. Another spot a little bit further on, there was a Poison Rana by Jungle Boy onto MJF. Poison Rana is a reverse Hurricane Rana, and that was onto the ring apron. And that was a terrifying spot, because it wasn't MJF's head. It must have been Jungle Boy's knee, but something made a very pronounced thud, and it was a very frightening spot. And MJF sold it like he had been shot in the head. He was pretty much dead. It was around this point that commentary mentioned that there was a 20-minute time limit, and that got me kind of excited, because it's been a while since we've seen any type of time limit draw in AEW. I think it was maybe Cody versus Darby Allin. I think that was the last time we had a time limit draw. Or no, for sure it was the Jungle Boy going the 5 minutes with Jericho for a chance at the title down the line, which I don't think that's been revisited yet. But they haven't been making as much use of the time limits as I thought they would when they first started. So they're about to get counted out, and Jungle Boy doesn't want to win that way, so he takes MJF and he puts him in the ring, and wow, you could not have a more babyface move by Jungle Boy. He just doesn't want to win that way. Wow, what a good American. You have some more back and forth. You have an O'Connor roll by MJF. He pulls the tights. No good. 2 count. Jungle Boy rolls through. Does the same. Tit for tat. Pulls the tights. No good. MJF is able to flip it around into what Excalibur called a modified European clutch pin, which I am not sure I have ever seen before. I don't really know how to describe it. He happened to have... It's almost like pump handle position, but they're in an O'Connor roll at the same time, where you have your opponent's arms, but they're between his legs, and the leverage was just, it looked pretty solid. So MJF picks up the victory without Wardlow there, which I think is something that really gives him a lot more credibility. I'm getting to the point where I'm almost a little tired of MJF because it seems to be the same cookie cutter stuff over and over. Of course, as a heel, he's going to try to cheat to win, but it seems like he can't do anything on his own or in a legitimate way. So for him to cheat the entire match and pick up the win in a legitimate way was a really cool thing to see for MJF. I felt like it grew him a little bit. MJF was really able to control the pacing very well and slow everything down and make it his match. I felt like that was really a testament to how good of a wrestler he is, even if I'm not the biggest fan of his character at the current time. But overall, very good match. One other thing I want to point out, Excalibur at one point called Jungle Boy Jungle, as in Jungle is his first name, so kayfabe. Forget Jack Perry, Jungle Jack Perry, forget all that. As far as I'm concerned, his first name is Jungle and his last name is Boy from now on. So Jungle Boy and Maxwell Jacob Friedman, that match, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars. That was a very solid match, very fun to watch, a lot of hard-hitting stuff, some good spots. Good match. And now we're on to match number 3, which is Lance Archer, whatever you'd like to call it, Lance Hoyt, versus Cody Rhodes, Stardust, whatever you'd like to call him. Those two fellas are going at it for the TNT Championship. You have JR introducing Mike Tyson, the man who ate another man's ear, who also used to box. And he says that Tyson's excited to be a part of Double or Nothing. And you could have fooled me, because the guy is very lackadaisical. He doesn't seem overly excited to be there. He looks very disinterested. But he also looks like he doesn't know what to do. He comes out holding the championship, and he kind of looks around like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? And he's just standing at the entryway, and Lance Archer comes down, chokeslams this random guy in the ring, and Tyson just starts giggling like a tiny schoolgirl. I'm like, hell yeah, Mike. Me too. I like seeing that dude toss other men around. That's such good shit, brother. Such good shit. Cody comes out with some. I don't think this is usually in his theme. If it is, I'm usually blocking it out, I guess. But it says wrestling has more than one first family, and it's not as self-indulgent as his other entrances. They can't have that much extravagance because it's not a pay-per-view in a normal sense. With coronavirus, they have to keep everything very muted. But man, I have a hard time pulling for Cody. Like, he does not feel like an underdog, because he's the a real life EVP of AEW, and that gets mentioned on air. So he's fairly close to being some type of authority figure. He's someone who in part runs the company. He's not as high up as Tony Khan. I'm sure Tony could still fire him, but he is an actual backstage guy in charge. And he has a way bigger entourage than anybody else. This is something that really bothers me about Cody. You've got Arn, you've got Brandy, you've got his brother Dustin, you've got QT Marshall. I feel like there's some other people I might be missing. But then you have, on top of that, the Elite, who he still has some type of ties to, even though they don't still hang out. You have Kenny Omega, the Bucks, maybe Adam Page, depending on whichever week it is. And they are still feuding with the Inner Circle, and Cody was originally supposed to be a part of that. They were going to have the Blood and Guts match, but coronavirus hit, and they never had the Blood and Guts match, so they didn't have that. And he's just like, you know what, see ya, I've got this mid-card title, I'm going to be in this tournament, I know you've got Chris Jericho over there beating you with baseball bats, but I got to go, me and Arn got to pick up this payday for this mid-card title. The belt, they showed a close-up of it. It looks fine. I had some people not talking too favorably about it because it's not technically finished, but it looked like it just lacks some detail. It's overall the shape looks okay. It seems fine. It's not the prettiest belt I've ever seen. It's nowhere near the worst. Good God, that Divas Championship was bad. That was bad. But it just seems like they gotta just put some final details on it. It doesn't look like it's just half finished or anything. It looks like everything that's going to be there is there. They're just got to do some final detailing on it. So, on to the match. Vance tries to hit a finisher early. Cody rolls out. Or I think he hit the finisher. He rolls out. Good call by JR to point out how Cody needs to be wrestling instead of fighting, because Vance Archer is 6'8", 280, big dude. He would just kill him. He needs to be trying to wrestle him. He needs to be taking him off the base. Good call by JR there. In a sea of garbage by JR tonight. Big Swole took a swing at Archer at some point when they were on the outside. I feel like it took a little too much focus off the match, which was kind of a bummer. And Big Swole did that quite a few times throughout the night, which, if you're trying to get yourself over, that's fine. But she specifically stood out as someone who was trying to, get involved in a lot of the stuff, and it was very distracting. It would be weird if a regular fan did that, so I don't know. It's just weird that I feel like she's maybe trying to get herself over. It was weird. There was a spot where Archer does this cool rope walk into a moonsault, and for seeing a 6'8", 280 guy doing that, it was a beautiful, beautiful display of athleticism. And then periodically throughout the match, they're cutting to Mike Tyson just chit-chatting and laughing with Dasha Gonzalez. Which, good for you, Dasha. Doing a little bit of flirting, maybe? Or just trying to, do some chit-chatting for the 20 minutes that this is going on, because he's Mike Tyson and he bites body parts sometimes. And at some point, they caught him just yawning. He couldn't... he's a fan, and they said he was at the last Double or Nothing, but I guess he felt the same way about this match that I did, which was it needed something different. Tony, for some reason, during the match says, obviously this isn't boxing, but if it was, there'd be a point system. No shit, I understand that. Mike Tyson's there. I know that you're trying to get him over, but just pointing out things that aren't the way it works in wrestling is a weird thing to do, so I don't even know why you'd say that, Tony. At one point, Archer puts on the EBD claw, which is short for Everybody Dies Claw, which is an odd name. I had just one time thinking about him having that on someone smashing their head into the canvas, and he's like, we're all gonna die one day. That's sad. At one point, you have Arn hit Archer and knocked him off the top rope, and he got crotched, and I don't understand why I need to be pulling for him. If I might have missed something else in my notes, but I feel like that might have been the first sign of interference in the match. I'm not really sure. Probably wasn't the first dirty thing by a long shot, but it's hard to tell. Jake the Snake was in the corner of Vance Archer, and you have Paul Turner throws out Arn, but he also throws out Jake, so I feel like that's a fair thing. It needs to be just between the two wrestlers in the ring. Cody hits an avalanche reverse suplex, dropping Vance almost directly on his head. That was a very scary move. After being thrown out, Jake comes back with a snake bag, which is the best way I can put it. Obviously, it's a bag made for snakes, and it most likely had a snake in it, and he was gonna, I guess, release it into the ring until Mike Tyson came up to him, ripped his shirt off, and started screaming, and Jake left. And then Mike Tyson didn't really know what to do after that, so he just kind of looked around confused again, just like the beginning of the match. Back in the ring, Archer goes for a second blackout, gets reversed. Cody hits 2 crossroads in a row and picks up the win. And I feel very about it. I don't feel like Cody needed the win. Cody's going to be fine, but he has so much behind him that I feel like the win, it just didn't look as good as it could have. Cody's not the underdog. I don't want to root for someone who's the favorite. He is a guy who works in the office. He's got a huge entourage of people, of connections. And who does Vance Archer have? He has Jake the Snake Roberts, this old man who's lived a very hard life. Yeah, he's rugged, he's tough, but Cody just isn't the underdog to me. So for someone who works in the office, he's booking himself very strongly, and I don't know if he's the one booking it, but he's in a tough spot because he can't book himself so strongly that people say things that like he's the Triple H of AEW, which is kind of looking like he kind of is, but you can't book him completely as a jobber because he has some name recognition and he can put people over, but it depends on how long he holds this belt, who he hands it off to. I feel like this would be a great time for them to maybe revisit the Darby Allin storyline. Overall, I would give Cody versus Vance Archer a 3 out of 5 just because I wasn't in love with the finish. I felt like there was a little too much going on with Arn and Jake and Mike Tyson. They were really focused on him, and the belt not being finished didn't hurt the match enough to knock it down like a star or anything, but then that factors into the whole thing too. So 3 out of 5. Up next, we get an injury update from Doc Samson, I think it was. I didn't get his name. I don't know if this is the same guy that's out at ringside, but it's an injury update on Britt Baker, and he gives a lot of medical words. It all kind of ran together for me, but he followed up with saying the injury was not as bad as the patient is, and basically shit all over Britt Baker for being a shitty person. So that was pretty fun to see. The match after that, we have Penelope Ford versus Chris Statlander. Penelope, of course, being a replacement for Britt Baker. So this is going to be a one-on-one match between Chris Statlander and Britt Baker, but we got Penelope versus Chris now. Kip comes out, and he looks like he has been Looney Tunes style, had a anvil dropped on him. He looks basically dead. Still has got the cool shades on, though. And I really like her entrance music, Penelope's. It sounds very British punk. Everyone is violating social distancing orders when Chris Statlander comes out because she is just nose booping everybody. You know, it's the way they say hello on her planet, but over here it's a violation of a social distancing order, I'm pretty sure. Throughout the match, you get a nasty dive from Chris onto Penelope and Kip. It's nasty, but it looked good. Throughout the entire match, Vicky is yelling at Paul Turner for a slow count. She's obviously favoring Penelope Ford in this. And for some reason, JR goes off and he says, I know I'm going to have some people asking, why is Vicky Guerrero there? Because she's a fan. It's very indignant. You know, she's there because she's signed to a contract, but that's a weird thing to just get super mad about for no reason, JR. I mean, hell, I'm a fan. I'm not there. I would be if I could, so it's more to it than that. The match got clunkier as it went on, which is sad because it was only 5 minutes. There was a weird stunner attempt by Penelope that might or might not have been blocked, depending on if you listen to what JR said versus what you saw. And even the crowd of employees who are like being paid to be there and be energetic and into the match are kind of like, meh, this is kind of a shit show. And there was a really sloppy Hurricane Rana by Ford, and it's very bad. I don't know if she was still banged up from taking a spot in the ladder match earlier, but she did not have a good time. Penelope springboarded. She did a forward handspring, came back, and kind of got swooped into a Blue Thunder Bomb by Statlander, and there was a pin, but it was no 3 count. So Statlander took her and put her in the Big Bang Theory, which is like a cool cradle pile driver finisher, and got the win. So Chris Statlander wins the impromptu singles match, and I guess she'll carry some momentum into the ladies title picture. I'm going to give Penelope Ford versus Chris Statlander a 2 out of 5, which I kind of feel bad for it because it wasn't a terrible match, but it was by no means good. It was not smooth. It was only 5 minutes. And I guess it served its purpose, but it was not enough to get a 3 out of me on this one. Up next, we have Shawn Spears versus Dustin Rhodes. Is Dustin there? Is he not there? We'll see. Spears comes out without his gear on, looks very sharp though, is dressed in a very nice suit, and shows that his year record is 4-1. 4 wins, 1 loss throughout the year. And I feel like even with social distancing, coronavirus, all this other stuff, his record should be a little bit further along than 4-1. And during this promo that Shawn Spears is cutting, for some reason he says this thing about Dustin that he's at home washing his tights, and he really sells that line for some reason. I don't know if that's some type of wrestler insult. I'm not really sure. So Dustin's music hits, and is he there? Is he not there? It was a joke. It's a joke by Spears. Of course he's not there. That old fool, he's dead. And they play the music again. He's like, guys, I only told you once. Brandy comes out down the ramp, part of that Nightmare Collective, the Nightmare family, this whole thing. And yes, I will give it to you. Before that, they did technically start the match, and Shawn was trying to get him to count, but that's when Brandy comes out, and I'll give it to you that Shawn Spears is a dick, and he cheats whenever he can. He's not a good guy, but the other guys are supposed to be better than that, you know? And Dustin basically hits a sneak attack on a guy who's not prepared to wrestle and just starts beating him down. And very quickly, Dustin starts undressing Shawn for some reason, even though he's in this nice suit. Like, I guess I understand taking the shirt off, you know, like that's more of a fighting thing. You can actually wrestle, but Shawn takes the belt off to hit Dustin with it, but then that means his pants come off, and his whole ass was out at some point. And JR had a line that he said, I bet you Spears didn't think he was going to be auditioning for a prison movie, which they had some very good 2005 humor in 2020, which he immediately counteracted with a good joke, because he said that you need to call a doctor because Spears had his ass cracked or something like that. It got a good chuckle out of me. And once we finally get a look at it, there was something on the front of Shawn Spears' underwear that we couldn't really get a look at, and it's Tully Blanchard's face. Yeah, Tully's been missing for a while, and he came back in the form of a picture right on Shawn Spears' dingus for some reason. Dustin, a little bit after this, hits the final reckoning, which is his finisher. It's a very quick match, less than 5 minutes. Brandy came out with him. I don't know why. Dustin is powerful enough that he shouldn't need a manager, because he was just thinking about retiring, and then he now needs back. It's a weird thing. JR at one point almost said, was talking about Cody. He said he was the first TNT champion, and then he said, I almost said TNA. Hope I don't get fired. Which he had a moment where he said to himself, he was like, I actually screwed up, and he had to kind of like take a minute to kind of apologize on air. It was a weird thing, but that was not the only time JR's messed up that night. Shawn Spears versus Dustin Rhodes is going to get a 1 star from me, because you can barely call it a match. They had a man's whole ass out, and if you're not Ric Flair, I can't give you more than 1 star for doing that. Rick gets 5 every time. Every time he takes his ass out in a match, it's 5, but any other time, it's a 1 star match. Up next, we have the no DQ AEW Women's Title match. We have Nyla Rose versus Hikaru Shida, and this one lived up to some hype. These ladies beat into each other pretty good, and they went all around the outside area. There was a good spot with a poker table where Nyla put Shida into the table went down, chips went flying everywhere, and JR had a really good line that said, Shida went all in there, and it was very understated. He didn't overplay it. I don't even know if he meant to do it, but it was It got a little chuckle out of me. And Big Swole was also kind of being distracting in this match. She did it a few times throughout the night. It just wasn't... Got kind of distracting from me. She also did it in the TNT title match too. It bothered me a little bit. There was another good point that was made where JR asked if Nyla Rose was suspended for beating up the referee Rick Knox, why was he assigned to this match also? And Excalibur just counteracted with, well, I can assure you we have the most impartial team of referees in all of professional wrestling. So really, how can you quantify that? You don't know what someone's thinking in the back of their head, unless they could be making some really underhanded, subtle calls. But it was a good moment by JR. There were a lot of good spots throughout this match. There was an Avalanche Falcon arrow by Shida that looked very good. The match didn't go too long, didn't go too short. I want to say it was only around like 10 to 15 minutes. Wasn't that long of a match. Maybe just around 10. There was some really good use of the kendo stick, which has been a through line in this feud for a while, and I appreciate it getting used. It was used hard. It was used to the head, to the legs, everywhere, and the final shot that Shida got onto Nyla Rose in the head set her up for a running knee, and that's where she got the pin. And Shida is your winner and your new AEW Women's Champion. Overall, very solid match. I'm going to rate this one a 4 out of 5. I think it was a very solid match, and I think the emotional aspect of Hikaru Shida winning the title it felt like she did it for Hana Kimura, and they made it sound like those two were very close. Hana Kimura being a Japanese Joshi wrestler that passed away earlier this week, so that emotional tie-in really felt like Shida. It brought out a lot more emotion in Shida that you haven't seen a lot of the time in her AEW career, so it was very good to see that finally come out, and knowing that win meant a lot to her. That was enough to bump it up from maybe what would have been a solid 3 up to a 4 for me. Up next we have our first main event, which means not the main event. It's not how that works. And it is for the AEW World Championship, which I am not a fan of that not going last, because I feel like the champion should be doing their best to have the best match of the night. The best match of the night should be the main event. It should be something that they're striving to do, and I don't know how I feel about the Elite versus the Inner Circle being the actual main event, but it's neither here nor there. So I love Brodie Lee. I love how they've taken the Dark Order storyline. They've turned it around from something that people really hated, and now everyone's really invested in it. But I also feel like it didn't have as much heat going in that the Jericho-Moxley match had. They feel like they didn't... I don't know if it's been the lack of fans or what, but they just haven't been building the same way. It didn't feel like it had the same fire behind it. And overall, as a pay-per-view up until now, I don't really feel like it's been worth the $50, as sad as that sounds. I've loved every other pay-per-view. I feel like this is the first... I've seen every one of them. This is the first AEW pay-per-view that didn't... or came close to... I haven't had a lot of time to think about it, that whether or not it has or has not lived up to the $50, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So the two get to the ring, and they have this line of security keeping them from each other, and I feel like that did a really great job of creating this tension before the start of the match. Something that I feel like the lead up the last couple of weeks hasn't really done a lot for. I feel like there hasn't been that tension, and just that little bit of the security built that tension. I don't know whose idea that was, but bravo. Very, very good job there. There were a lot of hard hits back and forth to start the match. The two make it to the outside eventually, and Mox hits a tope suicida onto Brodie, where he falls back, he tries to catch himself on the guardrail. Did not work. He took a little bit of a spill, and it was kind of funny because he just kind of fell right on his butt. Big Swole, she had some more jaw jacking, some more distractions, and it's like the third or fourth time tonight. Another good spot, Mox reverses a power bomb on Lee and puts Lee through the bell table. It was a pretty good little power through. It looks like he barely made it. There was a suplex from Lee through this card set piece that's been there the whole night at ringside, and it's conspicuously not used as weird. You got these giant things, and you're using all these other poker chips to cover up Brian Cage earlier. You've got some questionable calls here and there with the ref letting things go, but this is the first time it's been used. I knew it was going to get used at some point, and I guess you can only use the things that have your face on them, and these giant cards had Moxley and Brodie Lee on them, so I guess those are the only guys who can use them. And I feel like this match also had a lot of good use of all of the arena. They went up to the stage, and Moxley threw a small poker chip at Brodie. It was good use of all the space. And then there was the big spot, the paradigm shift through the stage, and I got kind of nervous here because I didn't know if Moxley had hit his head or not. And it was a very surprising thing. I wasn't expecting it, but the way their feet were sticking out was very cartoony. It took away just a little bit. They come out, Brodie's busted open. Didn't look like it. Obviously, he bladed there. He didn't hit his head in any way that actually would have busted him open. I don't think that was legit. And then you hit a paradigm shift. Moxley hits a paradigm shift. One count. Boom. No, not to finish there. Elevated paradigm shift. Kick out at 2. And a sleeper ends the match. And I was kind of disappointed by that. I feel like you never see a sleeper end a match, and the one time you see it, it's on a pay-per-view. I wasn't expecting it. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was hyped up for a finisher, maybe for it to keep building the way that it was building. One paradigm shift, no, that was a 1 count. Another paradigm shift, no, that was a 2 count. Maybe hit like 3 or 4 more, just spam it. There might be a problem with spamming finishers, but I just feel like going into a sleeper hole is kind of lackluster finish there. Overall, the rating for this match, I'm probably going to give it a 4. I wish I could have given it a 5, but it just didn't. It didn't hit as a 5 to me. It was a very solid match. I liked it. I didn't hate it, but maybe it's the lack of crowd. Maybe I don't know. But the match was only 4 stars for me. And finally, we are on to our main event for the evening. Not the second main event. It's the main event. It's the last match. It's the legit main event. And it is the Stadium Stampede match, the Inner Circle versus the Elite. And there was so much in this match. This was a 30-minute cinematic match. Something AEW is doing, I guess, trying to live up to. Maybe not live up to, but they definitely were inspired by the Boneyard match at WrestleMania, the Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania, and they did their best to kind of make it their own, but it was an interesting match. It starts off middle of the empty football arena. There's the ring, and everybody starts out there, and they run at each other, kind of XFL style, and they meet in the middle, and the Elite, they have weapons. They start going at the Inner Circle, but the Inner Circle's got like some padding on, and they go after each other. And where's Hangman? Hangman wasn't there for the intro. Where's Hangman? He's on a horse, and he is trying to run over Sammy Guevara with a horse. I don't know if you can actually run over someone with a horse, but Adam Page surely tried. He surely tried to kill Sammy Guevara. This was just crazy spot after crazy spot after cinematic thing after idea after idea after idea. Just boom, 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 30 minutes nonstop action, total nonstop action, TNA. Total nonstop action wrestling. So you've got Matt Jackson, he climbs the goalpost, does a flip off. I'm like, okay, this match is getting a little crazy. And then you've got everybody starting to split off. You've got Hangman going, still on his horse, finding the bar, and that should have been my first clue that this was not going to be something that stayed in the stadium and acted like a normal wrestling match. But I didn't take the bait. I was like, oh, he's going to go drink, maybe come back later, maybe he's got to be buzzed to be good, maybe you can only drive a horse when you're drunk. I don't know. There's a really good line from JR that said this is a hockey fight disguised as a wrestling match in a football stadium. That was it summed it up perfectly. So you've got Kenny and Matt Hardy up in this bar area fighting Santana and Ortiz, and they're going at it, and Omega gets powerbombed through this guardrail. It was very good-looking fall. It's kind of on the concrete. It was nasty. It was fun to watch. And then Matt and LAX, they end up getting in a pool, and Matt keeps getting reincarnated as former versions of himself. And it was fun. It was fun to watch, but I wasn't expecting it personally. I was kind of disappointed because I didn't feel like I got my full fill of good technical matches yet, and that's up to every person to decide on their own. Like, this is by all accounts not a be all end all review. Like, this is how it is my opinion of it. And personally, taking guys like the Young Bucks and LAX and Jericho and Omega and Sammy Guevara and these guys capable of putting on these amazing matches and having a pay-per-view that people paid a lot of money for and doing this with it frustrated me a little bit, I'm not going to lie. Because WWE doing their cinematic matches is one thing, because you pay for the network and you get a pay-per-view every month. So you pay for the network, say $10 a month, 10 times 12, 120. 120 for the year, you've got 12 pay-per-views. With AEW, it is... You're paying $50 a pay-per-view. I think they do 4 pay-per-views. That's $200, and you're only getting 4 pay-per-views. So I am very particular in what I'd like in mind, but if you got what you wanted in this one, good. I'm happy for you. I honestly am, but it was not for me. One thing I did like in the match, though, was the bar scene. There were several things I liked, but the bar scene with Adam Page and Hager, with Kenny Omega coming in, and Kenny, they have the big bar fight. There's a spot where where Page gets run along the bar like in an old Western movie. It was fun to watch. I guess Kenny's straight edge or just doesn't drink, but that was funny seeing him drink milk there. We go back out to the stadium. There's some crazy stuff going on out there. Nick's just hitting Jericho with footballs. I'm pretty sure he hits him right in the balls one time. You've got Matt just doing Northern Lights suplexes the entire length of the stadium onto Sammy, and I think that the one thing I do want to point out is that there was an end zone dance once Matt made it all the way to the end zone, and he was given a penalty flag by Rick Knox, and he super kicked Rick Knox. So if we want to keep some type of through line of credibility, there should be a fine and or a suspension. I know it's a cinematic match, I understand that, but it took place relatively in the world of reality of everything else that's going on. So it was on the same pay-per-view as Nyla Rose, who had been suspended for injuring a referee. So I feel like he super kicked a referee. I think they need to be held to the same possible standards. Just a thought there. there was a funny spot where Jericho didn't agree with a 2 count by referee Aubrey Edwards, so they went to the play booth after Jericho challenged the call. So that was fun. Omega and Hardy tried to run down Sammy Guevara again. There's so many great spots. It's 30 minutes of great spots, one after the other. Vanguard 1 is reincarnated as Neo, the natural electronic organism, and I'm pretty sure I heard JR process that for a second and go, what? And finally we get the match finish, which is a one-winged angel from like 20 to 25 feet through a wooden thing with a crash pad underneath. And that was the pin and the win for the Elite. They give Kenny a Gatorade bath. Hangman looks on. He's part of the Elite again. And that was that. That was the main event. And it was not really for me. And that is not emphatic. If you liked it, you're entitled to your own opinion. I'm happy that you liked it, but it wasn't for me. I gotta say, I'm only going to give it 3 stars, and I know that's going to be a controversial opinion, but it was not what I came into it looking for, and I think part of it, honestly, is the lack of crowd. The lack of crowd in the coronavirus era of doing live events and stuff like this, it does affect at least how I enjoy wrestling. Not all the time. Like, there have been some AEW Dynamites where the people that they do let in the arena, I feel like, does a great job of covering for the lack of crowd. But this one, it just got a little too far out there for me, and I love what they were trying to do. I love taking the risk, and parts of it were very funny for me, but looking at it compared to all the other stuff in the night, I'm only going to give it a 3. I was more on board for the MJF Jungle Boy match. I feel like that was more in line of what I came into this looking for, and I feel like this pay-per-view just probably did not deliver. It did not give me $50 worth of enjoyment, and that's such a bummer, because every other AEW pay-per-view I've seen has been great. There's been one or two matches or more than that have just left me flabbergasted and in awe, but none of these matches really did that. And that's okay. That's okay. You know, swing and a miss. Sometimes you can't please all the people all the time. I was just one of the ones not pleased this time. But I still love AEW. I'm probably going to keep watching the pay-per-views, keep shilling out these $50. And hopefully by the time All Out rolls around, we'll be somewhere back towards normal. Maybe they'll learn something from this. They'll take some chances on some other things. Maybe we'll see some cinematic matches on Dynamites or AEW Dark, or as a companion thing that you can go on YouTube and see. I don't know about putting it on a pay-per-view. It gets into a weird territory then for me personally, but overall I'm going to give the show 3 out of 5 stars because it was middle of the road for me. It was not bad, but it was not as good as as just about any of the other AEW content I've seen, and especially for the amount of money I paid, I feel like it didn't live up to it. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. That was my results and reviews of AEW Double or Nothing 2020, and stay tuned for other cool wrestling content.